My hair is kinky, my nose is wide, my skin is technicolor. I won't apologize. You peep my aura, you love the glow. Before you touch my shine, just know it ain't my style, it ain't my shade, ain't what I do, ain't what I say. I'm just hella black, I'm just hella black, I'm just hella black. You're far if you're offended, I'm just hella black, black, black. I'm just hella black, black. I'm just hella black, black, black. You're far if you're offended, I'm just blacker than licorice. Harder of another brother with penmanship. Smooth as butter, my lady lover is cinnamon. From the gutter, my baby mother, my venison. What that mean, my dear, like your dinner singing Bambi. Can we get a bit of color on the man we hail as the greatest mother ever tread the land or sea? Because it'll make our vision a little more grandy. Oh, so don't know why cocoa skin folk drip don't get promo in places with more bucks than added to combo. What if you don't know? It ain't my style, it ain't my shade, ain't what I do, ain't what I say. I'm just hella black, I'm just hella black, I'm just hella black.
So, ladies, I just tagged you all in. We're already live, and so I transitioned this over. Um, being super stoked and excited about this anti-Black conversation. So, we are on, gosh, this is day 3 of this week of the Anti-Black Conversation series on the prison industrial complex. And so what I want to do first is give you guys each a minute. I tagged you in on my page on the conversation. You guys, when you see the live from my page, then you're able to just share it on your pages if you want to, freely. Jay, I wasn't able to tag you in for whatever reason. I'll figure it out as we go into the conversation, but I did tag in Ebony so that she's got it.
Okay.
Okay, so my name is Toni McNeil. For those of you that tap in and you don't know, I am the founder and the facilitator of the Anti-Black Conversations. We are in the midst of a series of dialogue that we're having surrounding the prison industrial complex. Before we get started in our conversation, I always just kind of give a glimpse of what anti-Black conversation is. So the anti-Black conversation space was just created. It was birthed organically in order to create space for individuals who are Black to come together. I start to say people of color, but that's my default safe because I don't want people of color to feel excluded, but it is a space that is specifically for individuals who are Black to have transformative dialogue with other individuals who are Black around issues that impact us, issues that are laced and interwoven in white supremacy, racism, and anti-Blackness. In these dialogues, we tell our truth. We speak our truth, and in order to help us clean the lens from which we see ourselves and see one another. So that being said, I wanted to welcome each one of you women, wonderful ladies, diamonds in the rough, into this anti-Black conversation space, and I've been looking forward to this one for a while. So I'm going to have us go around and just do a quick intro of who you are, and then I'll kind of give us a summary of what it is that makes this space so special. So let's start with you, Pam. Intro yourself.
All right. Good afternoon, ladies. My name is Pamela Thompson. I'm formerly incarcerated. I did 24 years off of a 33 to life sentence. I was a 3-striker and was resentenced under 1170 D1.
And 1170 D1, what is that, 1170 D1?
1170 D1 is recall a sentence. And the qualifications for that was you had to either been down 10 years or more, or 50% of your time, right or free for 5 years, and have been shown some type of rehabilitation.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you coming on the panel. And thank you for kicking back with me last week and practicing before we came in, breaking the ice. Janine, I want you to introduce yourself, and you're unique because you're not from California. You are somewhere else, and I really want to just tell you thank you. I don't know what time zone you in, nothing, girl. It could be in the middle of the night down there.
It's 5 p.m. I'm in New Louisiana, Covington.
Nice.
Um,
Okay.
my name is Janine. I've been a CIW. I've been a Chachella. I did 2.5 years the first time in federal prison in Wasika, and then I did another 4.5 in Aliceville, federal too. So I have more experience with the federal prison than I do the state, but I have been through those places as well. And I've been home now 2 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And Pam, what about you, sis? How long you been home?
2 years.
Congratulations to you too. It seems
Thank
to be
you.
a theme that I'm running into the 2 year mark. I'm not quite sure what's going on with it. After before 2 years, everybody is just kind of quiet, like in hibernation. London, first of all, let me say, London, I love your name. Every time I see it, every time I hear it, every time I say it, I love your name. Snaps to your mama, whoever said, name her London. So intro yourself.
Thank you, Sister Tony. I want to say just welcome home to the other ladies. It's so beautiful. Glad that we could share this space with one another today. My name is London Crowdy. I did a little bit over 8 years in the federal prison system. Been to Aliceville too, one of the worst ones. But yeah, and I've been home now for close to 2 years as well.
Wow.
2 years. 2 years. Yeah.
Wow. Love that. So can I first say, ladies, that I can say this very easy, that you do not look like what you've been through.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's
a blessing.
I mean, for real, like how does it feel to be home? First of all, we'll start there.
Man, it's a blessing to be home. You know, I spent my whole almost, because I this was my second prison term. So I spent all my young adulthood in prison. So I'm learning a lot now that I'm out this time opposed to when I was, out before. So it's a blessing to be home. Freedom is real.
Okay.
It is a blessing to be home. It's only been 2 years. I've been fighting with it for the last 12 years. And it's just to change your life around and try to do things more positive than getting in trouble is just very hard.
Okay. We definitely got to lean into that. What that challenge is and why is it so hard. London, how does it feel to be home?
I mean, definitely truly a blessing, of course, right? I'm not even sure, honestly, how to put it into words. It's a rack of emotions. You feel truly blessed, and then when you are behind those walls, you build a relationship. You have your family back there, so there's also at times, feeling guilt or feeling like, man, just trying to do as much as I can to lift the sisters and the men too, who are still behind there. So this always feels like work. You feel gratitude, but I think there's also too, I experienced too, like yeah, I don't know how exactly to put it in words, but yeah. Blessed to be home now. Yeah.
So I don't even want to feel rushed in today's conversation. I really just want us to relax and kind of ease our way, just through it. Because this one to me is it's a little bit more tender, it's a little bit more. There's so much to it. I've had the opportunity to actually sit and have conversation with each of you one-to-one. And I'm the better for it, for real. I am the better for it. And so I've learned like so much. So for example, London, you and I, we were talking and you were sharing some of just the numbers and the differences when it comes to increase in women and women of color that are incarcerated. Can you tell us a little bit, about us? Just start us off there.
Yeah, well, any space I always get to speak on, I always like just let people know that in the last decade, the female prison population has grown over 700%. And so, people in the movement and, other folks, I just asked them, like always provoke that question, like, why? Why do you think it was such a high increase in the female population? And also, that doesn't exclude, oftentimes I get a combative kind of conversation too about the men, right? We definitely know that our black and brown men are being, still arrested at a high rate. But the fact is that females, women, we are now being targeted. And it's not that we're just trying to compete with the conversation. We're just trying to be more into the conversation. Because again, so I think sometimes people think of prison, the first thing they think of is men when these walls are filled of women.
So when you say women are now being targeted, what do you mean by that? Does anyone else, first of all, feel in this space that women are being targeted more when it comes to imprisonment? Just being incarcerated.
Yeah, I think it's more like more women nowadays feel like they have to do whatever they can to provide any way necessary. Because for my situation, my kid's father had been incarcerated, so now it was like I have two little ones. I have to get out there and make means. So I got caught up in the system, and I think it's so easily now because back years ago they wasn't really prosecuting women the way they are now.
Okay. Okay. And so part of being caught up in this has to do with just being able to take care of the family, meet some of the needs that are there. Some of it is the life, just because I think, who was it, Pam? Pam, I might have been talking to you when I told you, girl, I was only like just one away, right? Right. When left, you went, okay. For real, we can laugh about that, right? Where we are right now, but real talk, only one tiny little wind of a breath away. So, and some of that had to do, for me, it wasn't even about providing for nobody. I was just, it would have, for me, if I would have gotten locked up, it would have been because of who I was with and who I was attached to and connected with, because I was that ride or die on the right side of the car. So is that like something else that may be taking place when it comes to women?
Yeah, I see that a lot. You have like you said, these ride or die chicks that want to take the case for their man. Like, say for instance, he might be on his third strike and she don't have a conviction, so she'll take that gun charge and go to prison, and then find out that he's not really holding her down like she didn't hold him down and took this case. So now she in here with either a 15, maybe a 15 to life sentence, because they didn't place all these enhancements on her, either for gang enhancements along with the gun charge. So now she's in there with this charge, and he didn't left her hanging for dead. So it's like, I see a lot of that in there. Females taking charges for their man, and then they end up being left for dead. And the only ones that really be by their side is their family, who they didn't ran through the ground. But yeah.
Wow. And so, and is there anyone that wants to add anything to that? Because like I said, remember, this is like free conversation, so y'all jump in wherever.
Yeah, back to piggybacking off of what Pamela said, I see that unfortunately, those are not like rare cases, right? And then we have a lot of women though who are in prison now because they were protecting themselves from their abuser. I see a lot of women in prison who have false sense of love. They don't know what love was, so they just were seeking it in all these, detrimental ways that ended them, in the place that they're in now. Like Jeannie was saying, for survival. And some, just being honestly fixated on that life, it can be very enticing when that's all that's around you and feel like that's the people who's making it is, doing that life. So kind of, you could gravitate towards that. But honestly, I see a lot of my experience, a lot of the women that I met, like you said, it's like just was those diamonds in the dirt. They didn't know what love was. They didn't have nobody to fight for them. They've been fighting since, when they were supposed to be playing with baby dolls and having their innocence, and they didn't have that. One of the worst things that I experienced in prison was hearing the women that I was with for years, but hearing their story, like actually hearing their story, and to hear how many women were violated, like that's just like a real like it got to the point where it was just like, oh my God, please don't say it, please don't say it, And when you hear their stories, you're like, man, of course you did what you did. You didn't need no prison. You needed somebody to wrap their arms around you. You needed someone to, protect you or whatever the case. And unfortunately, those are a lot of the women's stories I feel like I've met throughout my time.
So is sexual assault and abuse, is that like a common denominator, a common thread that you would see among, women?
Yeah, I would say that as well. And like London said, it's like a lot of the women, they get they end up protecting themselves and end up getting this large amount of time when the system just failed them. I'm sure they have reported like numerous cases, called the police, like, I fear for my life or whatever. When they finally defend themselves, then they're the ones that get all this time, and they looked at it as the bad person. And like you said, all they needed was love, and the system failed them in that area. But I read a lot of women that was into gang, and so they was into the life where, gang bang was their lifestyle. It's like, it's ridiculous how many gang bangers are in Chowchilla. And am I pronouncing your name right, Jenny? Janine, I'm sure you ran across that in Chowchilla. It was full of gang bangers, like seriously.
Yes. And then they feel like
very active.
Yep. They feel like you're affiliated if your husband, because for me, the feds kept saying, okay, your husband's this, so we know you're this. No, you don't know that because I've never gang banged. And that enhances you another 9 points. And I'm like, I fought them tooth and nail because I went from a 5 years to looking at 10 years for a charge that you're trying to put on me. And I'm not a gangbanger. Because my husband gang bangs doesn't mean I gang bang.
I don't understand. So when you said enhances you another 9 points, explain.
Like with the federal system, everything is about a point system. So the more charges they put on you, the more points you get. If you're gang affiliated or they feel like you're in a certain kind of gang, they enhance you higher. And I had to prove to them that I wasn't a gang member just because my husband was. Because they have files, I guess, of who's gangbanging. I've never gangbanged. You can't say I'm a gangbanger because my husband's a gangbanger.
Wow. How do you prove that?
I was never I have no gang tattoos. They didn't have any gang name. You know what I'm saying? They didn't they have books and stuff of different people or, that you never even see me really at gang activities. So how can you just say she's a gangbanger?
I know you see all the looks on my face just now because I'm. You laugh, Pam. Why you laugh when I?
Because it's foreign to you, but that's really what goes on in the system.
Oh yeah, I had friends in Chowchilla who actually got enhanced higher from the prison just because they had a gang tattoo on their arm. Not from the judge, not from the DA, but because when they went to get classified through the Chowchilla system, they had gang tattoos and they got more time.
Ooh, okay.
Ridiculous.
Wow, and wow. Okay. Yeah. So how are they adding all these? Because this is another thing. And so I've intentionally not even stepped into this landmine of conversations. I had a mother call me about her son recently. One of my dear friends, he got arrested, and so he has gang charges, he has gun charges, he has um, resisting arrest charges, he all kind of stuff. And so these are previous charges, but he was never incarcerated. He got arrested and was going to court, and she called me because she knows the work that I do, and she said, I don't understand all these charges. And so, because it would say I have a gun here, and then a gun enhancement, and then everything was like double and triple. It doubles and triples. I don't understand that. So, is there anyone in this space that could help me understand how are they how are they sentencing people, and what is an enhancement, and how does that add to the time that is being served by women and men in our community?
That's just another way for them to make you do more time. It's basically you're charged with one thing and then they're recharging you, giving you more time on it.
Exactly. So when I let me see, my first case, they gave me 5-year enhancement for each robbery, right? So, and then they end up striking certain priors, which I never learned all that legal technology, but it had added up to so many years. So even when when I went out to court and got resentenced, I didn't even know I had all the charges that they had charged me with. I'm thinking that they gave me, I know that they gave me 25 to life for the 3 strikes, and then they gave me a 5-year prior enhancement for for going to prison in 89. They gave me 5 years for that, and then they gave me 3 years for a gun enhancement. So that was 8 years. Now you have to do your priors before my life. I had to do my priors before my life sentence even started.
Explain that. So explain that.
I had to do 8 straight years before my life sentence even started. So once the 8 years was up, then my life sentence started. So yeah, it's just crazy. So when I went out to court, the judge sentenced me. I ended up having like 7 counts. So when he was resentenced me, he said he resentenced me 5 years for count 1, 3 years for count 2, and like 5 years for count 3. He was just adding up all this stuff that equal to 33 years to life. And I'm sitting there like, I didn't even know I had all those counts. Like, where did they even come from? But yeah, it's ridiculous.
Do you remember when we were in our one-to-one and you told me how much time you were sentenced to? Do you remember the question that I asked you?
What was
I was like, did you kill somebody?
Oh yeah. No, I didn't. And I would when I got sentenced to a life sentence, I wanted to flip the table over, but I couldn't understand. Like, I got 33 years to life for a crime that I didn't do. I'm not saying that I wasn't guilty of something, but I was sentenced for assault with a firearm. That's something I didn't do. Now, hanging up a public phone, I'm guilty of that. The man lied and said that I pulled a gun on him, which I didn't. But when they pulled me over, it was a gun in my car. Don't get me wrong. However, I was sentenced in, you guys don't know, but Norwalk County is one of the most prejudiced counties in California. And that was my second time going through that court. 7 years later, the arresting officer that arrested me in 89 was the same officer that arrested me in 94. And he remembered me.
Wow.
Right. And so it was a white lady that was in there, and she had actually stabbed her live-in boyfriend, stabbed him. They gave her 4 years. And I wish that I had got her name because I would have used her case. And so that just goes to show the presidency. And
So during the same time, you're saying during the same time that you were going through your court procedures and your sentencing, there was someone else at that same time that actually did stab someone with intent to do bodily harm, take life. You did not. You got 33 to life.
yes,
You got 4 years.
4 years, and she was a white lady.
Is that something that you guys see as common, London or Janine?
Oh yes. See, with me, they were trying to give me a whole bunch of time, but I ordered this book called Busted by the Feds, and I studied it all day, every day. And so I went back tooth and nail with my lawyer, like, hold on, this is not this, this is not that, this is not this. I mean, he hated coming to see me. That's how much I studied that book. And then I was educating other women, black and white, like, no, this don't carry that. No, this don't carry that. So then they start telling me, well, Janine upstairs told me that this don't. They came in my cell and took my book because I was helping so many people that was about to sign off 10-year sentence, 8-year sentence when it didn't carry no more than 2 or 3. But if you plead guilty and that's your thing that you're agreeing to, of course they're gonna give it to you.
Wow. So London, is that something that you see common? I don't know, I don't even want to say discrepancy, but the differences in the sentencing when it comes to women of color and women who are white.
Absolutely. In the federal system, it used to trip me out when I used to see, women in there and they tell me it's like their second or third go round, and both of their sentences was less than mine. And so like what Pamela and Janine was bouncing off of is that's why I tell people that this system don't play fair and everything. So when you open that, like, that's why my whole purpose is, right? One of my big purposes is to get to people before they get to that. Because let me tell you something. One, with the whole plea agreements and the different enhancements and et cetera, first of all, like Pamela said, a lot of us don't know law. And that's what the system, that's why they, prey on poor people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ones that's we not educated or we don't know. I'm not saying that we're not educated, but we don't know this, this field, the law or whatever the case. Prior to going to prison, I had this whole thing about TV, justice will prevail. They're not going to this and the other. Then I was like, whoa, like I signed a 5-year plea and got sentenced to 13 years, 9 months. And I remember ordering Busted by the Feds. I've been to 5 different county jails, and they used to always take the book from me. That book,
yeah, they don't want you to know it.
Like to educate yourself, and then basically being forced into a plea agreement. Because I remember I had a lawyer, and then one day he came to me right before we went into put in my plea agreement, and I looked at him, and I said, "Listen, your wife has cancer, right?" Because he used to miss a lot of my appointments because his wife was sick. And he just looked at me. I said, "Yeah, your wife has cancer." And I said, "You're not a doctor, are you?" And he just looked at me and I said, "No, you're not a doctor." I said, "So you got a certain amount of dependency on this doctor to do what's right by your wife, right?" And he just looked at me. And I said, "What if the doctors came up to you and said, 'I'm sorry, sir, there's no more that we can do for your wife'?" I said, "What's the first thing you going to say to him?" And he just looked at me. I said, "The first thing you'll probably say is, 'Have you done everything you can do for her?'" I said, "So let me tell you, I'm not a lawyer. So I'm asking you, have you done everything that you can do for me?" That man got his stuff and just like literally walked out the room or whatever the case. And then comes to me in court the next day and says, "You know what? I couldn't even sleep last night." So the same paperwork that he had for 8 months, he started going through it and found a discrepancy. So the discrepancy dropped my plea, my minimum, right? Because the feds, I'm not sure if the states have, but they have these minimums, right? That's how we get locked in. So my minimum was 5 years. But this discrepancy dropped it down to 0 years. Still to this day, they won't tell me this discrepancy. But still, even with that, the day I got sentenced to 165 months. So it doesn't, like, these folks don't play fair. They don't care about you. This is not about rehabilitation. This is not about, getting you back together because they want to see you do better. That's not that's why I tell people, don't get that. I had that misconception, right? I had that naive ignorance or whatever the case, just buying off of what the media shows. Or actually, I feel like sometimes in our community, because there's such a tossed around of going in and out of jail, we can almost normalize it, right? And so, yeah, all this stuff, honestly, Miss Tony, you talk about your friend and everything. I mean, it's so common. We want to, it's like, we want to, I wish I could give you a facial expression like, oh my God, that's crazy. But it's real, it's the comment and real.
That's hurtful. It really is, because yeah, I mean, it was like, you have the charges for the gun, and then another charge for being in violation of probation for having a gun. So whatever charges that you had when you didn't go to jail, now they put that on here too, for the prior, and now you got a charge for the bullets and a charge for every bullet that you had, even if it was crazy.
Well, oftentimes you're going to get these charges because it's going to force you into a plea, right? A lot of times they'll say, okay, well, you sign this plea, out of these 6 charges, I'm going to drop, 5 of them, but I'm going to give you the most. They'll do some stuff like that, or whatever the case, those stacks or whatever the case is, so that if you do decide to go to trial, a lot of them going to drop, but something will stick. So it's just
my second federal sentencing. By the grace of God, I was able to get a black judge, which was Richard Jones, Quincy Jones' brother. And he had mercy with me because the prosecutor was coming for blood. And, and when I got to speak, because they let you talk to him before you get sentenced. And I'm like, at the end of the day, you relate with me, because when you take that robe off, you still a black man. You know what I'm saying? So he had a little justice, and I was like, I'm thankful that I got him, because had it been anybody else in that jurisdiction, I would have got buku time.
I have a friend that's in there. She have attempted murder. They gave her 7 to life, and then they enhanced her 25 years. Wow. So she have the 7 to life plus 25 years. And that's for an attempted murder.
That's crazy.
It still ain't 33.
Right.
I'm not taking away from it. I hear you. I hear you, but I'm not comprehending. There just seems to be too many different variables and directions that the district attorneys and judges and that these prosecutors can go in, where there is nothing that is consistent. There's no consistency when it comes to sentencing. What's the formula here?
And then I was seeing white girls, because I was in places where the majority of the people, it might have been 2 black or 3, and then 80 or 90 white women that were getting probation, 1 year, time served. And I'm just like, whoa, like, that's just crazy. When everybody else that was African American was getting buku time.
So does that create tension and when it comes to interactions with inside the prison?
Oh yeah, I was frustrated. Like, it'd be days I took anger out and get to throwing their stuff, and just because I was so angry, and I had to realize, okay, it might not be you personally, but I felt like it was you. So it was days that I'd get in trouble and be in the shoe for a week because I interacted on something that made me upset because someone got sentenced and got a lot of time compared to someone who didn't. So it rubs on you because you come close to these women. You see them all day, every day. So it's kind of like that's your family instead of your real family, because this is who you interact with every day. So it's hard.
How are you guys pitted against each other, or is that? I mean, now within. I mean, so now we're dealing with this, and these are things that are happening. We've talked about some of the variables that may create, those that create the consequences for women who are being incarcerated. What are some of the things that you're dealing with once you are in
the prison?
I want to leave that free for y'all because I know it's landmines that we could be walking through and skipping through. So what are some of the things you're dealing with?
You deal with racism in there, but it's not so much with your peers. Mine's always was with the staff because you have like, white staff that run the units and they favor their own opposed to the black and brown. Like I could go up there and ask for a second phone call and they'll tell me no, it's not phone signups. And then I'll see a white girl go up there and they end up giving her the board and let her sign up. And I'll be like, well, ain't that a bitch? So I keep that in mind and I know where they coming from. And then when like they do room searches, they would hit your room harder than they would their own kind. They would like destroy your room, opposed to their own kind. It's like little stuff like that I used to go through. But I used to get that from even my own, Yeah. It's just crazy.
Well, I see the difference going from Wasika. It was like so racist. I mean, like they treated the black people horrible. And then when I went to Aliceville, the majority of the people were black. The warden was black, all the officers. And I'm like, oh my God, they're treating you like with dignity. They're treating you with respect. Like they're saying they're not calling you or just picking on you and stuff. So it was just like night and day being in two different facilities. Like it was totally different. I don't know if you got the same experience, London, but like Aliceville was totally different being somewhere else because it was like everyone was black.
Yeah, mine was since kind of like Pamela. It just depends. Some of it you got love for your people, then some of it, they, they was in the gang themselves, and I was the enemy. So, but what I'm gonna say is that the difference that I've seen amongst the black women and other women. Honestly, I felt like it was a dip on a lot of their confidence, their self-esteem. And one of the first encounters I really saw that was when I was going through county jail. So when you go to county, most counties, if us black women, sometimes we like to have our hair done, we like to have our hair extensions and everything, right? And so, wigs or whatever the case. So before you even get back to population, they make you, take all that stuff off. They make you strip that off. And oftentimes they don't have products for black women, right? Mm-hmm. Which is important, right? Because from county, that's where you go to the court, etc. And I remember this sis, she, normally when you go to court, you go with a couple of people that day. And there was one black girl and she was going like with 4 other white girls. And I remember she just boo-hoo crying. I pulled her into the cell. I'm like, what's going on? And she was like, look at me. I look guilty. She's like, look at them. She said they could just wet their hair, pull it back into the ponytail.
Oh my God.
And because of her hair, she had to, in order to even keep it tame, she had to plait it and, just plait it back. And because of the little comb, it wasn't not too much we could do. It was just the best we could go back. And she was like, look, soon as they see me, they're going to say that I'm guilty. I'll look like exactly what they're trying to describe me to be. And that's a real thing. That's a real thing that it's a real thing,
Yeah, I had my lawyer a couple times tell me to take my braids out. He's like, don't wear your braids. But that's the most convenient for you when you locked up because you don't have like you said, the things you need. And he's like, you can't go to court with braids. And I'm thinking like, okay, won't wear braids, but
that is so true, London. You made a good point on that. I never even looked at it like that. But that's real.
Yeah, that right there. I mean, that's beyond real. Yeah, and that one deep. That one real deep. Yeah. Like I'm sitting here just on pause. I'm sorry. I felt that.
Yeah.
It's hard. You got to be on pause, right? Because even like, is no policy that's going to fix that. That's like just in the whole makeup of America, honestly, And so me as a Black woman, I could see though that like I used to have deep conversations. That was my thing, right? That's how I survived my time, is empowering other women. Mm-hmm. When I went down or whatever the case, when I saw this white woman prosecutor making me sound like the most demonic thing in the world, that I was, a lost cause. She didn't talk about none of the things I went through. She didn't talk about none of the good things I did, nothing. She just made me feel like my life was just so invaluable, and everybody else in that courtroom. I made a conscious choice when I was working out that I'm going to make this time work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing is, though, everybody's not like me, right? I realized that I came from a household, even though that we struggled. I had my mother and I had a strong grandmother and everything. So people oftentimes too, they put us in a box. They'd be like, why can't you be like London? Why can't this and the other? Well, if you heard that sis story, you will understand, why she can't, or why. And it's not that she can't, is that nobody gave her a chance to be yet, right? And so when I was in prison, my big thing was empowering women. And I would oftentimes come around these young sis who would label themselves ugly, who would label themselves like, look at my nappy hair, look at this and the other. And that was that was like, that does something to somebody. To mere existence or whatever the case, like, it's so crazy. Sometimes like on Facebook, I'll be looking at people when they, and I'm like, dang, who is that? Right. It'll take me a minute. Like somebody I've been down like 5-6 years with, just because we so different from the inside and the outside and everything.
Wow.
That does something to somebody's like psychological, like it's deep. It is deep.
So who do you have to become in order to survive? Pam?
What was that? What was the question?
Who did you have to become? Who do you have to become in order to survive? What do those stages look like for you? I'm going around now on this one.
Well, when I first went, I was in depression for like a almost close to a year. So because I couldn't fathom coming back to prison with a life sentence. I had just did 4 years. I was out for a year and a half. So I felt embarrassment. I felt all kind of emotions going back to prison. And I didn't want to face the people that I had just left. So I wouldn't come out. I was heavily medicated. And it took like 5 of my friends that I had did time with to literally come in my room, throw me in the shower, get me dressed and drag me out. And once they did that, I had to regroup and like, you're stronger than this. You know what I'm saying? Once I connected with God, it was nothing I couldn't do. So once I made that connection, I was who I was meant to be, a strong Black woman. And that's how I got through those 24 years. I'm not going to say that it wasn't rough, because it was. Like yearly, I would go through different things. Like when my father passed away, it was like the certain time of the year, I was like, why am I feeling like depressed? And then it dawned on me that it was him. I don't know if he was trying to connect with me, like, whatever, but I would always get depressed around that time. And when I realized it, then I was like, okay, I know that he's watching over me, and I got to pull through this. And, year by year, I got stronger and stronger. But a lot of people knew who I was because I came in as a gang member. And so I didn't get messed with like that as far as my peers and anything like that. It was mainly with staff. When I started standing up for the women, I had this conversation with you and started advocating for the women in there. It was called the Women Advisory Council. I always ended up in lockup because my voice was strong, and I would fight for the whole general population, not for myself, but for the other people, because they didn't have a voice. And I would always end up in lockup because of that. But yeah.
What about you, Miss Janine?
Okay, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Who do you feel like you had to become in order to make it through this particular journey?
Being incarcerated?
Yeah.
By the time I even made it to the prison, because I fought tooth and nail, it was usually almost 2 years that I've already spent in the county jail. So by the time I made it to the prison, I was already halfway done.
Pause, time out. I know it. I already know the answer to it. I'm going to ask it because I like to ask stupid, intentional questions. You mean someone can actually spend 2 years in a county jail?
Oh, yes. Especially federal. Everything's slow. Ain't nothing fast about them.
It could be longer as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, okay, I'm not even going to stay there because I'll go down a whole nother rabbit trail with that. Okay, so you have spent 2 years in the county jail.
No
Is it a difference?
sunlight,
No,
no outside, just
what?
horrible. Yeah. So by the time I made it to the prison, it was just take every course they could give you, work out, go home. That was my routine. I took everything that you can think of, RDAP, all the Christian classes, uh, anything, any program they had. And then I worked out and by the take a shower, go to sleep. That was my program every day until I went home. I had parents that were, my dad's a pastor. I had people that were praying for me. They came and visit me. So they would be like, just keep your head up, stay out of trouble. Like Pam said, to piggyback on that, this was my second time going back to the feds. So everybody was like, oh my God, we would have never thought you. Oh my God, like what happened? It was so embarrassing because it's like you're seeing the same people, not even 16 months later. Like, dang, didn't you just go home? And I'm like, oh Lord. But I struggle with it because it was like, came back home, ended up catching another case, same federal case. And it was just like, okay, you go back to the feds and then they send you right back to where you went. And it was hard. So that time it was like real hard because I was embarrassed. It was more like, okay, I'm hiding out from everybody. I'm only going to child line for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I'm running back to the room because it was just like, you don't want to hear you're back. And then to see women that's got, more time to you who, like, if I would just get the chance. And I'm like, oh,
Wow.
Lord, yeah. So that was real hard.
So there's a lot of shame and stigma that is associated with that.
Yeah.
London, what did you do, or who do you feel like you had to become in order to make it through this journey?
Well, I was on a mission. Like, I didn't feel like I had to become anybody. I felt like the way, like I just shared, the way that woman was talking about me in the courtroom honestly became personal. So I felt like, that there was no way that I was going to prove her right. I was no way going to become this person that, she tried to make me out to be. So I was like on this conscience mission to find myself as a woman. By the time I stayed in county for a year, and then by the time I reached the fairgrounds, I was 24. And so for me, I never accepted my time, right? And so I went through though what Pamela went through, and it breaks my heart because I remember, it was a mix of things. My peers, I remember being in the bunk, right, where I wouldn't even want to leave the bunk. Like I just was like, how did this happen? It was 2010. My old out date wasn't until 2022. And so I just remember like just kind of like a small give up. Like I didn't know what to do. Like I was like numb. And I remember my peer coming over to me, and she looked at this picture. We could have pictures on like the wall. And she looked at the picture. Her name is Aisha Hall. And she said, in this picture, you look like a boss, but you sure ain't acting like a boss now. Right. And she's like, you need to get up. You need to comb your hair, And that was like, that is a big piece that got me off of my bunk. That was a big lifeline for me. I had different lifelines, and God, of course, there was no secret into like, even when I wanted to give up, God didn't allow me to give up. But the person who I had to become in order to do my time was just that strong woman that I desired to be. So I really took that mission very seriously on finding myself as a woman. So it was a 2-part process. I had to figure out who was I, and then I had to go into the next process of who did I want to be. And once I figured out that, started teaching myself that, then I started teaching other women in classes how to, go on the same journey. And that was my lifeline. That was another big lifeline.
So that leads right into that next question. Who did you need to become? And so you're landing there. But is there anything deeper that you would want to add to that? Especially for individuals that find themselves in these situations. Who did you need to become? Who needed to wake up in London in order for you to get to the other side of this?
I mean, I had to find myself. I had lost myself. You know, I didn't know who I was. You know, when you in that lifestyle or whatever the case, you become what that lifestyle turns you in. You know, so I had to take all that off, and being the dope man's girlfriend, being the street girl, being the hood girl, whatever. Wanted to be looked at this, valued as this. I had to take all those layers off, and so I mean, I don't really have like that's just. It wasn't really about who I had to become. It was more so who did I want to become. Like I took on that. I realized that was a personal choice, and I looked at it just like that. So it wasn't like a force from anybody. It was all about me, like, and living my truth.
So when you're saying that, it really strikes a nerve with me, ladies, because and I don't want to veer too off course on this, but you're tapping into something that is really relevant. And I don't necessarily know, I guess maybe we can touch on it, and then just make a community agreement that we may have to revisit this conversation with this in mind. You had to take off some things that society has put on you in order to even figure out who you wanted to be, who you wanted to become. And when you were saying that, I know a lot of young ladies that, just really feel like, that's the life. They want to be about that life. They, they got thug passion. They think this is it. And I'm talking about young girls. And so what you're saying is really relevant. But in this very moment, just in this moment, in this little brief of a lane, what would you say to them? What's the end game of that? What's the end game of that, Pam? Come off mute, sis.
Right. So the end game, I had to realize that I had to change what society said I was. Like when I got sentenced, the judge called me a menace to society, a menace to the judicial system, a menace to myself. He called me a menace to everything possible. And I'm looking at him like, really? This is like my second time ever getting in trouble, and you taking some robberies and then but this man had made up, and now I'm a menace to society, a menace to the court system, everything. And so with that being said, what was placed on paper followed me all these years. It followed me. And that's what they label me as. So when I go to prison, this is how they looking at me. And so going in there with a life sentence, I feel like I wasn't ever getting out. So I lived my life as if I wasn't getting out, as if I was still on the street. So I did everything under the sun. I still gang bang. I sold drugs. I fought. I did all that. When I changed prisons, when they transferred me, all that followed me. Even things that other my peers made up on me, that followed me as well. So when I would go to try and like get a bed move or something, they was like, I had nothing coming because of my rap sheet. And I'm like, okay, so let me tell you this. I said, everything that's on paper is not always true. Right? And so I had to let that sit with them for a minute. And I had to prove myself to them. So as the years went by, so back up a little bit. I had got this 115. And 115 is a write-up. Mm-hmm. And this write-up was for extortion. 3 girls had lied and said that I was extorting them for money. Right? And so I had to prove myself out of that. So what I did was, one of the girls that, I had a counselor. She the one told me that the girls had lied on me, right? So she gave me her information. I called her as a witness. Now I'm defending myself in prison. So I called her as a witness, and she ended up telling the truth. So I ended up getting the 115 dismissed. And then when I took it back to the staff to prove my innocence, I said, remember when I told you that everything in black and white is not always true? He said, yes, you did. So I was able to present that dismissed 115 to him. And then that's when things started changing for me. But I had to take that stigma off of me, what the system placed on me, to prove that that's not who I am anymore. And with that being said, when I started seeing the young girls coming in there and they were so active with their gang banging, and I had to realize that that was once me. So I started taking them under my wing and, trying to get them to see a different side of themselves, of who they are, who they can be. So I started this, I didn't start it, but I became a part of this group called, it was for gang violence, right? And so what I did was I had them write their story of what led them to prison, and then give me a before and after picture, and how much time they got sentenced with the crime that they committed from gang violence, right? So I was going to collectively send those to the juvenile halls so that the counselors there can match their story with one of the young girls or boys in there that had a similar case to them, so they can see that the road that you headed down is going to lead you to this amount of time. Look at these women and how much time they got, but look at them now and how they changing their lives. But I end up getting transferred, and it never hit the ground. So
I want to say that as you were talking, so one of my mentors, anytime I'm doing any theme that I approach, that I'm led to, because I just don't pick stuff out of the air. So any theme that I am led to approach with an anti-Black conversation, I actually begin doing research, and I surround myself with individuals that to me are experts in those areas. Experts in the field, experts through study, experts through experience. And so I see one of the mentors that I've been pulling on in this, because I'm actually sitting at the feet of lifers, and gleaming from them, when approaching these conversations. And so Daryl Poole, he's one of the gentlemen that has so graciously allowed me to, glean from him. We were talking in our conversation, one-to-one, about labels. And one of the questions, that he had me to consider as far as presenting is, what labels have you bought into or placed on yourself, in this? And so when you were talking, I was like, okay, they put labels on you, but somewhere in your mind, you, and in London, you were referencing that too. And Janine, I'm going to go to you next. Seems like you may have adapted those labels, adopted them, maybe believed in them. And that's a part of anti-Black conversations. That's a part of the wiping the prescription clean and coming to an understanding of something that is different. So Janine, were there labels that you placed on yourself that you adopted?
I just got infatuated with the fast life and money. And I didn't know at the time how to love myself. It was more love things. Love the BMW truck, love the Porsche truck, love the Chanel purse, love the Gucci shoes, and do anything it took to get that. And I realized, it took almost half my life trying to live as the Jones when I knew I couldn't afford it. And trying to keep getting it kept getting me into jail after jail after jail after jail. But the wake-up call for me was when, like I said, I was fortunate to get a Black judge who, before he sentenced me, said, I see potential in you. You can be better than that. Don't let me down. And just to have someone who was higher up to say they see potential, and someone who's been in and out of the county, in and out of this, in and out of that since 18, it was like, you know what? I got to do better. I just have to change my ways. And so when I came home this time, it was like, don't get me wrong, I still like all the expensive stuff. I just work 20 hours here and 30 hours there and 10 hours here, because it's like you can still have it. That's what I tell the young girls that struggle, even some of my young men friends. I'm like, before you go make that dumb decision, think about the consequences before the action, because I didn't. I let the action happen first and was like, oh, Lord, here comes the consequences. At 20 years old, you thinking you know everything when you don't know nothing. You don't want to listen to the old folks because you feel like they too old. They can't tell you nothing. And now I look back and be like, I wish I would have. I wish I would have did things differently. I'm grateful that I'm home to be able to one day tell my grandkids and kids, when I have grandkids, I don't have any, but when I do, like, look, you can do so much better. My heart breaks because I have a 22-year-old who had 3 strikes, and he's in prison now. And if it wasn't for my sister going tooth and nail with the prosecutor, my baby would have got life. But because she bugged that man every single day, by the grace of God, he got 10 years. But that's still a lot for a 22-year-old who's never been in prison. So it's like, because he seen mama go do whatever it was to make it ends meet, he did the same thing. So now it's like, I got to do better, so he knows you can do better. If you see me do better, then you'll want to do better. Sorry, I didn't mean to cry.
Please don't apologize. We just had deep conversation yesterday about tears, the necessity of them, the healing that comes forth from them, and to be unapologetic. So do not apologize in this space for your tears. That's real. That is absolutely real. That was my next question, was going to be, what has this cost you?
So much. I miss both of my kids' graduation from high school, one of them from college. It's just like certain things that you could never replace. And it's like right now it's close to Christmas. So many Christmases being locked up, and still have close friends who has many of years still left to go. And it's like, you think about presents and you think about this and that, but just to be grateful to be home with your family.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, for me, it cost me not being able to have kids of my own. I went in at a young age, and now I'll be 50 next year, and my time clock is running out. But I don't think that I'll be able to have kids at this point. I miss my grandmothers. I didn't get to have a good relationship with them because I was gone for so long. And then watching my nieces and nephews grow up, I missed all their childhood. I missed a lot that I can't get back. I wasn't even allowed to go to my dad's funeral, being a lifer. And that was the hardest thing for me.
London, did you want to share anything?
Yeah, but just, I missed my 20s. The time I feel like I was kind of supposed to figure it out. I think that in my mind, mentally, I wanted to like think about restarting my life to be like just hopping on a bicycle, like just, like I was just gonna get back into it. But you don't even realize, honestly, I've been out 2 years and I don't think that I'm really just starting to understand like the psychological, like, difficulties or whatever like I'm experiencing based off of being incarcerated. Like it's just because I hit the ground running. You're just trying to figure it out. Like my sis Pamela, not like her, but like I was trying to do a documentary on that as far as like how the system, it seems like they lock up Black women in their years of where they're supposed to be their reproductive years. Yeah. And with myself, I'm 34, and, for me, it is a constant. It's these little things, right? Like I don't know what, sometimes the confidence in just approaching life, right? Like, I don't know if I'm going to have a kid. I feel like I can't have a kid right now because I'm still getting myself together. Do you have a kid? Because then I didn't really get to hang out in my 20s and I want to do so much stuff. Everything feels like there's this, like I have so much to do, but no time to do it. And like even trying to even figure out how to get there. But I mean, I feel like with my, honestly though, I always say that, but I feel like I'm really blessed. I know a lot of people that have it a lot worse, you know, than I do coming home. But those are just some of my personal fights that I go through. Yeah. And two, I always feel like this weird thing. I have to forget. Like I feel like I should still be that age sometimes. And so like even when I show up in a room with like younger kids, I feel like, well, you know, in their 20s, I feel like I should be kind of fitting in, but then like the, you know, the interactions I get from them, I feel like they are kind of looking at me like, lady, like get out of here, you know. But it's this weird, like I don't know, I can't really explain it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about because sometimes I feel like because I went in at 23, so it's like sometimes my mentality is still at 23 opposed to 49. So I get what you're saying. Especially when I came with my nephews, I think I'm young.
So I want to touch on a couple of more things before we, as we get ready to wrap up. So there was something I think, London, in our conversation that you said that really stood out to me, and I wanted to lean into that a little bit. You were saying that you said that when referenced in a sense that when, I'm not quoting you, so I'm gonna get it probably a little wrong, but it left me after our conversation. What it left me thinking is that typically when a man gets out, he may have the support of his woman to fall back on. However, when a woman gets out, she okay, Janine, you know where I'm going with this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want to lean into these dynamics just a little bit because okay. Do I need to finish it? Does somebody just want to take over?
I think you can see us all kind of like, you know, this, you know.
Only family was there for me the whole time. Okay. So that's the only thing I had was family.
Yeah, me too. The guy I was with when I got sentenced, he ended up getting married to somebody. But you know, the women are more loyal in that sense than holding a man down, opposed to the men. You know, I don't want to talk bad about all men, but I have a yeah, I can't do that. I ain't gonna do that.
Well, and typically where I'm going with it is, I think that it was more so framed around this. Women, so at the birth at the conception of the prison industrial complex, the explosion of it was in 1984, and then it just got higher and higher. So it began to escalate numbers higher and higher. And the first population that you see for years that is being exodus, is what I call it, from the community is the Black man. And then you start to see this 700% increase in the Black woman or women overall, an increase in women of color going in. And so women, though, during a certain time period became the heads of the household. And so now women are not being the heads of the household. You've got mamas and grandmamas, you know what I'm saying, that are being the head of the household and holding these spaces down. And so then what happens when you begin to see an exodus of the women who are going in? Where do they go? Do they go back home to mama?
I mean, I think that everybody's situation is different, Miss Tony, but I want to say like a small, like little thing that I think that it's like these little things that get so overlooked, but they play such a big picture. And so even when I say like if we know that the facts is that the female prison population has grown 700%, but still the system has yet to fully identify the unique needs that a female goes through when she and her needs while being in prison, right? So, for example, we had to fight long and hard just to get sanitary napkins, in prison and so forth, to not have for them to be divided and not just on commissary. The fact is that out of the 5 prisons that I've been through, it was told to me plain and simple that the men, their waiting rooms and visitation rooms are full every weekend. Ours are very empty, right? The females are normally, studies show that over 90% of the mothers that are currently incarcerated were the primary caregivers of their children. So you see in prison, this, I can't even tell you, like, in this short period of time, the things that you see women go through when they're trying to keep that connection with their kids, while they're incarcerated. Whether it's, some people are blessed and they know where their kids are. You see women who get on psych meds and mess them up for their entire time because their kids have been taken away from them. Oftentimes the caregiver is the grandmother or their grandparents. So, they're getting older. They got to worry about that. I tell people the worst thing I've experienced in prison that happened way too often is when a day starts off normal and you hear somebody screaming to the top of their lungs. It's only find out that somebody has lost their child while they're incarcerated and can't go to lay their child to rest or get in contact to figure out what's going on when they're sick or whatever it is. We even wear a lot of female prisons, a lot of the clothes that we wear are fitted for a man. These are just to name a few. Right. And so, yes, when a female comes home or whatever the case, they often have still unique needs that men oftentimes don't have to go through. So if this mother was the caregiver of her child when she comes home, and this person is home, they're like, "Ooh, here's your kids back," right? This mother has to not only figure out what she's going to do in the world, figure out her way and this, that, and the other, but she's also have this, and probably too that what's the word I'm looking for? The guilt, of leaving her child and so forth, and how and I see parents now, too many of my friends, where the severity of the relationship, not seeing their kid of all that time or whatever case, and sometimes that relationship never gets, fully back together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much and everything, and there's no systems put in place. There's not a lot of resources put in place to respond to such important thing. Because what happens, just that little part we were talking about, what that does is puts us into more generational curses, right? So the mom was going, now the kid is upset, this, that, and the other. They don't, and now they get back and they get into the lifestyle. They don't have anybody. They have to go through foster care. It's all these little things. These things are continuously overlooked, but every day they're happening. And no one is, it's a real delayed call on doing something about it.
Very well said, London.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, yes, I can snap for presentation. I just don't want to snap for the principal.
The suicide rate had got pretty high in there as well too, where I was in Chowchilla.
I saw that.
Yeah, it was real bad, and they were all lifers too.
Well, so the trauma then the trauma is it's a lot of trauma. It's trauma on both sides. What I want to know in this instance, well, before I move from there, Janine, you have children.
Yes.
You and I know that you spoke of your son who is incarcerated. Do you have children who are with you?
Yes, I have a 25-year-old who's actually home and he's doing good. But my husband was my 22-year-old, so it was like the mama and daddy both got snatched. And then my oldest one, he was able to stay with his father, so he still had his father in his life to help him and stay on the right path. When the 15-year-old, when I first got in trouble, didn't have nobody but grandma, and grandma's too old to be running the streets and doing everything. So he just started gang banging and being in the streets, and that's the thing. We're just now rebuilding our relationship because it takes years Because, you know, I had to let him know I'm sorry for not being strong enough to go work that McDonald's job back then. You know, now I'm strong, but I'm 40. I should have been strong back then to make sure mama was there. So it's like it takes years of rebuilding it.
How do you heal? What's in place to help you heal?
Time, and just let them know, like, the most I do is I write them all the time now. I send pictures and money, whatever I can do, you know that I'm here.
Janine, I love you so much, and I appreciate.
Thank you.
I mean that for real, like solid. Like, so now I'm asking a very self-ish question.
It's okay.
How do you heal? What's in place to help you, Pam, London, and the other women, your sisters, the other siblings, the other family? What's in place to deal with the trauma to help heal? What
Meditating,
program?
prayer, getting strong people in your corner, knowing like there is better out there, and surrounding yourself with better. Like, that's one of the reasons why I didn't go back to LA and had to go somewhere completely different, because I knew for me, I didn't want to get caught up back into the fast lane. I need to go as slow as a turtle, even slower if I could. So I know going to a familiar place, I mean, a place that wasn't familiar, was going to basically start over from scratch. And I needed that so I could learn how to be better within myself, learn how to love myself, and be a better parent to my kids. Because it's never too late. And that's what I realized. Like, I can't think about what I did back then. I can only focus on right now. And if I can help them and help other women and men that can, before they get themselves in that situation, because like I say, it's easy to get in prison. It's hard to get out. So hard.
Mm,
I almost had a fight the day before my release date to go to the halfway house. And it's like everybody looking like, you going home in the morning. But just
yeah,
because you're going home in the morning, don't, I'm here now, you know, and things happen.
man. So what about you, Pam, London? What was in place? What programs? What reentry programs? What's there?
Um, so what helped me heal?
Well, what helped you heal? But what first of all, what was there? What did you know that you had that you could depend on to help you heal and get your heart and your mind and everything in alignment from the trauma that you have gone through from youth, young adult. You know what I'm saying? Um, you went from a woman that went in prison thinking you're gonna be there for the rest of your life to a law changing and then you being able to be released.
Mhm.
Surprise.
Right. Exactly. So when I came out, it was like foreign to me. Like everything has changed. The neighborhood don't look the same. But I was held in the county jail until I found a program to go to. Because originally I was going to get a whole new change to go to Sacramento, but that didn't happen. So I ended up staying in LA. And my homegirl found a new way of life for me. She called and they got me in there. So going through that reentry program, it was addiction based. You know, it was free of any type of addiction, but that afforded me the opportunity to get to know me and what I needed to do for myself, because we had a 30-day blackout period where we couldn't go anywhere. But I had to forgive myself and forgive those that ever harmed me, that caused me any type of trauma, that led me to do the things that I did. And so once I did that, then, you know, I started talking about it freely, and that began to free me from the inside, talking about everything that I ever went through that I held down deep inside, you know. And so now I tell everybody I'm an open book. If I don't know something, I'm going to ask, you know, because if you don't know, you don't know.
She gonna ask. She gonna
Yeah.
ask, and she gonna make you. You know, she is. Uh, she was like, "You said I could call you, so I'm calling you now. You available? Let's practice."
The worst thing that I did, like, I never took advantage of the computer literacy classes in there because I felt like I wasn't ever getting out. But I tell the ladies now, take advantage of that because you can get out at any given moment like I was. And I came out not knowing how to work a computer and had a meltdown. And so with that being said, once I had that, because I was too embarrassed to ask for help, ever since that day, it's like, if I don't know, like I said, I'm going to ask.
Wait, when you told me, because you were telling me if it's okay. Is it okay if I share about the card?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The EBT part, I didn't know. So that's something that they need to teach the ladies coming out is a pre-release class, how to work a debit card. I went to the grocery store and, I handed the cashier the card. And so she was like, oh, no, you swipe it. I'm like, swipe what? Put a chip where? Because I didn't know. So that's things that need to be taught prior to the ladies coming out, especially the ones that's coming home doing a long, census. They don't know nothing about that and working a cell phone. Nothing. So, yeah, I felt so embarrassed, like, because I didn't know. But now I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm going to swipe it, put the chip in, everything. And building credit as well. That's what I had to feel about too. Like, because I didn't know anything about credit. And that's something that the ladies need to know coming out. You have to have good credit in order to do anything out here. Get a place, a car, anything. So it's very important.
For real, for real. Some of us in the community that ain't never been in don't know that we have to have that. Go ahead, Janine.
Oh, no, I'm just agreeing with her. It's so true. You come home and don't know half the stuff. And then by the time you do know it, it's like, oh, Lord, okay, so that's why they gave me all that stuff. It's a 400 how to get there. Like, so it's like they don't prepare you. And that's how I always felt. I was like, all they basically say is make sure your people send you your coming home clothes and that's it. And I'm like, okay. Like, they don't say this is how this is going to happen and this is how this is going to happen. And it's like, I don't know if they don't care or if they just don't have the right resources or what, but they just kind of throw you out there. And with me, I went to a halfway house where there was like hundreds of men and like maybe 7 women. So I'm like, wait a minute, this is weird. I mean, I went to having thousands of women to, you got me by men now, like you need to separate. You really do. This is like you need to be in there focusing. You need to be this. I ain't seen a man in 5 years, and 4.5, and you gonna put me in here with all these men? Like your mind is not, it wasn't ready.
Yeah.
No.
So I felt like, okay,
ready.
I had to pray. I'm like, they set me up for failure. This is already a failure.
Wait, don't put me in a space with hundreds of men and then give me a rule not to engage. Shut up. Come on now. That
and it looks like they've been working out the whole time too.
What? Oh my God.
A new way of life I wanted to add in there too, because I never knew how to write a resume. So all the jobs that I had inside, the job coordinator helped me to format that to make it look like that I had been working out here the whole time. And so I was able to, get a job and I know how to do a resume now.
So how hard is it to find the right kind of reentry program? I mean, is it hit and miss, or do you think that they all just pretty much, are they all in good standing?
Oh no, I only been to one, but I heard that it's some pretty bad ones, like towards San Diego. I think it's Claremont, but for the most part, I got some good reviews for A New Way of Life. Plus, I was there. And then they have the independent home. Once you go through the initial stage within 30 days or 60 days or however long, you can go to the independent house where you're working and you have to buy, everything on your own. So
okay,
that was good.
Yeah, I want to say that there is some resources out there, but of course we need more, right? And so a big part of helped me just reintegrate back into society was community. And for me, my first stop was legal services for prisoners with children, All of Us or None. So you have these foundations, these organizations that are ran by formerly incarcerated people, right? which is a big help, because I remember my first time going to All of Us or None, and I remember looking it up on the phone, like the little map thing. And I remember it said it was like a 40-minute walk. So in prison, you know, my good days, I could jog 9 miles. So I'm like, shoot, a 40-minute walk, I'm there, right? So, you know, by the time I get there, I remember I walked in the door and I was just like, had this big smile on my face, like, hey, right? And they were like, hey, how you doing? And then I just boo-hoo cried. Like, I felt like I was holding my breath the entire, like, moving, like men were pulling up to me on the side of the road, and I was like, you know, like, you know, staying like, you know, I'll call the police. And it was just so much. But I remember that moment when I broke down. It was these 3 women who like just circled me, and nobody had to say anything. They knew what I was going through, right? And that really helped. So I even, you know, Susan Burton, she's the one who first brought me to Los Angeles to do her program, you know, her I Testify. And so it's these formerly incarcerated women, honestly, and you got you know, Kim Carter, you got, you know, we started our own nonprofit. You got Amina Elster with Unapologetically Hers. I think that's saying that if you're not formally incarcerated, you can't have these programs. But I think that if you are going to have a program for formerly incarcerated, you should have formerly incarcerated people working there, because there's this element that unless you actually been there, unless you actually, like, you know, because there's this whole thing too, if system impact directly impacted, I'm talking about directly impacted where like you could not leave the grounds, you know, you had a number, you know, you know what it feels like to wake up as soon as you open your eyes, you got that deep feeling and you just trying to, it's like, I always tell people, it feels like being in the middle of the ocean. Only thing you doing is trying to focus, stay afloat, right? And so having those types of re-entry programs that's ran by formerly incarcerated folks plays a huge part in you know, having that community and people that can, you know, relate to what you're going through, I think is a big tool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true.
I super love this because you guys are answering questions and going into dialogue before I can even ask the question. Because I know for real, it just makes it really good. So because I was going to ask, you know, I'm a community organizer, which y'all know. And so as an advocate and a community organizer, you know, what do we need to do? What do you need us to advocate for? I got other community organizers and stuff that are watching, tapped in, all of that. So I'm in spaces. Can I be transparent? I'm asking that. Y'all know I'm being sarcastic, facetious, right? But look, let me do it anyway for those that think I'm not. Can I be transparent for a moment?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, so you know that you know, you've got people that say you know, that profess to be organizing, you know, for the most marginalized, and those that are directly impacted. I'm going to choose my words very carefully because I don't want to offend anyone, but I do want to just, you know, hit this. However, they're vastly, grossly, severely, drastically disconnected. And so if you, in other words, it's very difficult to create space for individuals that you don't even know how to hold conversation with. You don't engage with, you know, oh, I'm not racist. My best friend is Black. You know, that's just your token Black person. That's not necessarily, that doesn't mean that you know, you don't have some of these issues. And so I feel like there's so many unknowns, so many biases, so many breaches and barriers. And I'm learning every time I have conversation with men, with women who are formerly incarcerated. I'm getting messages, I'm getting emails. So and it can feel overwhelming because I don't have answers. I don't have solutions. And what I'm finding is that the emails and the messengers, inboxes, all this that I'm getting just from the series are people that just was like, okay, you know what? I just want to share my story. I just want somebody to hear my voice. So how do you help us organizers do better at creating space and organizing? What do we do to advocate?
You've been doing a really good job with the Peacemaker Fellowship. I love that. And I look forward to sharing that space with you guys because that's something that's needed. And you guys bring space where we can go and be ourselves. And you know how we get down on Mondays. I love it, and we need more of that.
Oh, y'all get down.
I hate that it's gonna be coming to an end for me in that area, but
What
yeah.
do we need to do? And I hear that. So Pamela, even with that, I feel like that is a miss on our part. That we have a 10-month program that has been created for individuals from every spectrum that have been directly impacted to come into a space and feel safe, to take off their armor and be transparent. But it's only for 10 months. And then I see after 10 months, there's nowhere for them to go. What do we do? What ideas do you have?
Oh, try to get it. I don't know at this point, but we need more of it. I do. I would like to hear London and Janine's.
I feel like they need to have
Yeah.
a program kind of like how they have AA. Like you have a mentor that you can always call on and depend on no matter what, because this is a addiction just like drug or alcohol or anything. And it's so close that you can backslide and fall any day. So when you feel like you having that, to be able to reach out and say that I can call my mentor because I'm going through something, or I feel like I can't just talk to somebody.
Somebody is listening and have their Facebook but turn your volume down so that
I
you're
know I
not.
just had her leave. I'm sorry. She was trying to close my dad's office door. I'm sorry about that.
You're good. And so, London, what about you? What do you think?
I mean, I really don't have the answer, but I really feel like that that these programs are important to hold these, like what you're doing right now is you're holding space, right? You're allowing folks to hold, you're allowing us to hold space and to be able to tell our truths. That plays a big part. What I tell people oftentimes when they want to get involved, that I challenge them, don't come into this like the movement as if you got to solve it, or don't, like that's how I think sometimes people approach it. Hey, it's just, and know what an ally is too, right? The
Okay.
thing is that in order to fight this beast, this massive beast with our country has been built on and everything, it just can't be one party. It can't just be formerly incarcerated folks to fight this, right? So allies play a huge part. The allies could get into different rooms, different groups, that I can't possibly get into because of my conviction. The system is super parentalistic, right? When you come home, you got that, you deal with that with your PO, your probation officer. So if you're an ally, if you want to help, stand next to me, be my friend, you know what I'm saying? Talk to me like you'll talk to anybody else, let's have this conversation. Let's, build a friendship, build a relationship. And also too, within that though, realize though clearly what an ally is, in my opinion, that helps. And because sometimes I feel like when people been working in a system so long, they feel like they know, without going to prison or what, like they know like what I should be doing with my life, which can be hard at times, right? So I think it's also too like learning that, and also too, if you haven't been to prison, if you haven't physically been to prison, like we need you in this movement as well, but realize what directly impacted is versus system impacted. Because what I'm seeing too is a lot of the resources there's a lot of resources out there for us, but anybody can get to these resources if they put system impacted. So the people who are like actually been to prison, who has to check that box, who got to worry about that background check or whatever the case. Sometimes we're competing with the same resources for folks who don't have those same criteria, those same hurdles to go over, but because they knew someone that was, incarcerated, they can also too apply for the same thing. Not saying that's all the way wrong, but it has to be a more like a better structured system put in place, and realizing how that can actually work against the very community that we're trying to help.
I think I want to stay there for a moment, and I don't want to be apologetic about it. You're saying not that there's anything that is necessarily wrong with that. Well, it's a possibility that it is. If it's broken, let's just call it broken, and fix it. Because one thing that I was thinking about is that individuals that I am coming in contact with, so example, look, say call a spade a spade. So I have addiction. I am an addict. And I have addictive behaviors. And so I went through, some 12 steps, and I facilitated, I did all of that. And so I would have been termed as a functional addict, right? The only spaces that I have really found valuable, transformative, real healing, looking at myself where I don't feel like I just don't fit, is in those 12-step programs that have been run for formerly incarcerated individuals. When I go into those spaces, I can take off all of my hats, all of my masks, all of that other stuff. And it's ran and facilitated by individuals who were running these programs when they were in. I'm finding more healing in those spaces, more self-awareness, more enlightenment, more growth, more development, more passion, more in those spaces that are being ran by individuals that are being released and coming out than from those that have never been in. I'm saying that because if the money and funding then is going towards the individuals that have never been in, right? Then, but the healing and everything that is needed in order for us to be restored, repaired, grow, are in those spaces that are getting picked. No, there has to be a shifting of funds. So we need to look into that. We need to lean into that, and maybe we need to create space and bring individuals like yourselves with these voices in spaces with funders, nonprofit philanthropists, and different individuals in order to bring awareness to that. I said that intentionally because when those opportunities open up, and I'm speaking it, believing it will, I'm calling London. I'm like, London, come on. I'm calling
Right.
you.
Tony, honestly though, it's not an easy conversation, right? And I could just bring an opinion, but I don't want anybody to get wrong what I said, because I also do look at, the kids. Me personally, the first thing I feel like I think about the kids. I feel like the kids are the ones that, struggle the most through this, right? Especially when their parents, like, look at sis here when she said about her son, like, think about how traumatizing the effects that left on her son when both, one day mommy and daddy is there and the next day that's not, And so I feel like there needs to be systems and, funding, strictly put in place for them, so they don't have to.
Do you think it's not enough money to go around?
Absolutely. But I think that when having these conversations, though, it needs to be, thought at the table where it's like we're not leaving folks out, important things out, and not saying that one, is more important than the other, but I think that it just needs more conversation behind it.
Right. And we are in agreement. We are in absolute agreement saying the same thing. I guess I'm just more heavier footed on the part of. I look at the weapon, and then I look at the person that is behind the barrel and the one that is behind the trigger. I see a victim in both. And that's a statement that creates a lot of upheaval when people hear me say it. There is healing that needs to be had on both sides of that weapon, especially in our community. And so if we only drive resources to to one side, but we don't drive equal resources to the other side, then we are not approaching it from a holistic place. And so yeah, I think it is. I agree with you. It's a conversation that needs to be had very delicately, there needs to be equal posturing of advocacy on both sides in that conversation space, because one always wins heavier on the other. Anthony said, that's transformative justice. Say that again. Ashe, my brother. That's one of my mentors talking. So ladies, so we're going to wrap up this conversation. And what I want to ask, is there anything, you know what, I'll do it the way that I've done it before. If you were able to speak to your 20-year-old self, what would you today, and I want to give us a minute to think about it. I don't want you to be rushed. What would you say today to your 20-year-old self?
Don't do it. I'm just kidding. It was a joke. Not really.
Love yourself more than a man. Get to know who you are before you try to jump into being grown. And it's okay to be a turtle first. You don't have to go head in first. And it's all right to not be accepted. Be accepted by yourself, for yourself, instead of peers. Don't try to please people. Please yourself. Get to know you.
I have to unmute myself. Yeah, I would have to agree. I would say love myself, and girl, you tripping. For real. 'Cause that day when I got arrested, I was on something else. I was on something else from junior high. And I had to learn to forgive them for the wrong that they did me, because I wouldn't have never been in that place and and caused myself to be put in a situation like that. So yeah.
So would you be talking to yourself then about forgiveness? Would you talk to your 20-year-old self about maybe looking back and forgiving
Them and myself, as yeah. Mm-hmm. Forgiveness.
Man.
But I have forgiven them now. I had 24 years to do that.
Woo!
Yeah.
Girl.
And I'm good.
Yeah. Okay.
I can see them now, and I'm good, you know.
Okay, so then I could sum that up by saying then, all right, so sister girl, you can forgive them now, or you can be locked up for 24 years until you're ready to forgive them then.
Yes, I have forgiven everybody.
London, even yourself. Miss London?
Kind of a lot with, Janine and Pamela said, and I'll probably ask myself, okay, what's the end game? That's what I would ask myself. What's the end game? And I would have taught myself the whole 1 + 1 = 2 formula. Like, it got to make sense. So what are you trying to go in life? What do you want to do? And everything needs a self check. Does it make sense? Is what you trying to get to? Everything you're doing now, is it making sense to get you to that equation? So just asking, pretty much what that means is just asking, what is the end game? Set of moment satisfaction.
Well, I would tell myself that I don't have to give myself, my body, my treasures. You don't have to give away this. Don't give it away. Don't give it away. I'm listening to that too. I'm trying to find that. Let me see. There it is. Yeah, I would tell my 20-year-old self to stop giving myself away. Stop giving the essence of who you are away to people that don't know what to do with it. And can nobody else, they don't know what to do with the power that you have. They don't know what to do with your virtue. They do not know what to do with all the purpose that is within you. Stop giving it away for free, because what you're giving away is valuable. Yeah. So, ladies, I absolutely enjoyed this time with you guys, for real. It will not be the last time. It will not be the last time. Pam, you leaning in? What you got to say?
I enjoyed this space as well, and I hope that it won't be the last time.
It will not be the last time, because yeah, I really, really, I would love to bring us together, especially to share space with some young ladies. And so I would hope that you guys would be up for that, to bring in some young ladies that would be able to just sit at your feet and glean from you, to you, ask you questions and learn from you and you from them.
Absolutely. Yes.
Awesomeness. All right, you guys. So I'm going to take us off of live. And thanks everybody for joining in with us. Miss Pamela, Miss London, Miss Janine. You guys are fire, absolute diamonds in the rough, for sure. And you guys, thank you for just tuning in to Anti-Black Conversations. If you guys need to reach any of them, just hit me up, message me. And we will make sure that you get connected with them, and so that they can connect you with any of the tools, the resources, the organizations that they are affiliated with. So love y'all. Peace.
Sis Janine, I'm gonna be lifting your son up in prayer. He's ready to get me.
Yes.